Right then, this is Sharky from SHAR-KADE. Now today I'm going to show off a few games that's been added to the SHAR-KADE shooter. This is really just the ultimate kit. Basically, I've gone through, done some reconfiguration. I still have a glitch with Demul shooter. I'll just turn this down a moment. So we still have a slight glitch with Demul shooter. For some reason, every time the machine restarts, it loses the settings for the guns, the calibration and stuff. So I've got a tools menu on the main menu of Hyperspin anyways. So there's a nice tools menu. I can configure the gun straight from the main Hyperspin menu. And that'll run all the Demul games. So Sega Model 2, what's the other one? Sega Naomi, and I believe a couple of TeknoParrot games as well, which I'll show off in a second. So it's not a big deal, but it is annoying as for some reason it just won't keep the configs. I've tested it with Gun for IR kits, keeps the configs, not a problem. Changed the OS as well, completely changed the OS, tried it on a completely different OS drive. It just seems to be something to do with the IDs of the gun, maybe. I don't know, but as far as I know, I've got it configured correctly. It was working in the past, it's just no longer works now. I've tried about 8-9 different versions of actual Demul shooter. It just, for some reason, it forgets configs every time. Though the config is still there in the main directory of the Demul shooter folder. I've spoke to Brad D about it before, and basically he doesn't even understand what's going on. He doesn't have that issue. Just for some reason, these are separate guns as well, which I've tried, and I still have the exact same problem. But like I say, it's not a huge problem. It's fine to just load up from the tools menu and so on. So each gun has recoil. So we pull the trigger. Now I did have a problem the other day, and I figured what the problem was. It wasn't the USBs like I explained before. It was actually the power supply unit that I had inside. Now with these, it's hard to find a power supply big enough to fit inside the unit nice and neatly. So basically, we pull the trigger there, we get our recoil, pull the trigger there, we get our recoil. And the guns no longer freeze up within the games. That's fine, all works. But it is a power supply issue. Like I say, the problem is I can get power supplies which are 170 to 240 volt. But for my American customers, we need 100 volt up to 120 to 240, etc. Those power supplies are slightly bigger than the actual units. And I like to keep everything neat, tidy, and so on. Now, I have got some power supplies coming. At the moment, I'm actually using the second custom power supply as well, but that's mainly for the PC power supply, running into a 12 volt to 24 volt PSU as well. But that doesn't matter. Like I say, I've got some power supplies coming that should fit in these perfect. The size of them, I don't know what the availability of those power supplies are going to be like. Because I haven't come across them before. I've looked many a times. There's so many transformers basically to look through, and the ones I've found I haven't seen before. So hopefully there's a stock always in of them. I'm going to probably order a load in anyways, so if I sell any more of these units, then I won't have any issues with power supplies and so on. So that's sorted. Like I say, hopefully Monday I can get the new power supply in, get everything tested. This unit is basically finished. There's a few things I haven't screwed down yet because I've been doing some tests and stuff like that. So the way I've got the recoil working on the guns is something I figured out a while back. Shared the information with Brad D. He'd done some more extensive work on it, and then I've went in back, worked off his sort of method and mine, merged them together, spent days upon days setting up all the gun games with Recoil. And I think there was one game which was House of the Dead Scarlet Dawn. I haven't tested it yet on a new setup, but House of the Dead Scarlet Dawn for some reason used to work, then the recoil just wouldn't. Even though all my settings and everything look fine, for some reason that one game out of the whole system just isn't working with the recoil. I've got to yet set up Patreon, my Patreon on TeknoParrot for some of the newer games like Aliens Armageddon, which I wanted to show off, but I haven't got my code, it's at home. So I'll set this up on this machine. Basically, these machines are gonna also hopefully be online soon. I've still got to do some extensive testing for online, make sure there's nothing gonna come in from an outside attack and so on. Like I say, the RPCs, I don't fully recommend keeping them online, but these are going to be safer online for the games themselves than what my standard arcades are. Because my standard arcades, there is some games, if it recognizes a network connection, it can break those games. Street Fighter 5's a prime example. So these units hopefully will be online as well, and you'll be able to access those Patreon games. So you'll be able to purchase Patreon, set your own Patreon code up with TeknoParrot, and those games will work spot on. Like I say, there is a risk. We can always, if you buy a unit from us, you can always back up the OS drive with the whole drive, buy a secondary hard drive just to back everything up onto that drive. So if there was any issues with network attacks on your home network and it ended up messing up your OS, you can just reclone the drive, everything will be working again for you, no problem. So that's the idea of trying to get these set up. I may even offer as a safer method is a secondary backup drive. So basically offline drive that can be cloned to these systems, and it can all be built inside the unit. So if you ever had issues, a game went wrong, you can restore the hard drive. May take about 4 or 5 hours for a 2 terabyte drive to reclone, but 4 or 5 hours, set it off, and then your whole system's running perfect again, which would be spot on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and load Tomb Raider up. I'll turn the volume back up. I'll try not to talk through much of it. Just turn the volume up a little bit. Now I do have another shooting sim coming soon. A wall mountable shooting sim with the gun for IR setup. Now I won't be selling the gun for IR kits myself, but what I can do is you can order your gun for IR kit, and if you're in the UK, you can contact Raymond at Arpeg Electronics, buy your kit, have the gun kit sent to me, and then I can set up everything from there. But you would be responsible for the shipping if you're in the UK or Europe for your shipment to be delivered to you, because Raymond doesn't ship outside of the US. He only ships in the US, so you can contact him, arrange the shipping yourself. I've done that on some of his products as well. Karaoke kit, which I'll probably show off soon. I don't know if I've got time, I will. The karaoke kit and stuff like that that Raymond sells, I've got one myself. I've got the speaker, which the speaker I bought from Raymond, with the microphones. Absolutely brilliant kit. But like I say, I do have a gun for IR wall mountable arcade shooter, which is going to come with 4 players for games like Tomb Raider and Rabbids Hollywood. So it's going to be a cool bit of kit. It's going to have a perfectly nice design and everything. I'll show off, like, hopefully in the next upcoming months, I'll show that unit off. So let's go ahead and load Tomb Raider. So I have the buttons all mapped for the menus and stuff. We have our up and down, left and right. as the coin buttons, where you would, the pinball buttons, and then you have your start and coin on the front. Some games start as your trigger. I set that up for most of the TeknoParrot stuff. So let's press start, because this is a free play game. And then you won't see your cursor on screen at the main menu for the guns themselves until you shoot and select. Once you're in the game, it'll show the triggers on screen. I'll try and do this one-handed. I do have a reload there. Let's hold the trigger, skip that, and as you can hear, as I shoot, the gun does fire. Same with gun 2.
Thank goodness. The pilots were able to jump. Our ticket off this island is gone, guys, but we need to help them.
Need to reload that. Reload again. It's quite difficult to do one-handed when you need to reload. But this game does have a cheat system, and for some reason it pulls up a display on gun 2 there. I'm going to take a look at the file, see if I can disable that, just so I don't get that information on the screen there. But that game works. Like I say, I'll go in and configure the game and try and disable that. I'm sure it's something simple within one of the configs of the game. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and load Rabbit's Hollywood. Now I've got a few different setups for the guns. For the recoils for the guns, you've got to set to a letter. Basically, I've got Y and U I use as to recognize as a recoil. So I'll turn this down again a second. So I have mapped for the recoil keyboard keys, so Y and U. And as I press the trigger, I can have a single shot, a burst shot, fire and hold. So when you hold the trigger, it will slowly rapid fire. So you'll do a single shot as you press it, and as you hold it, it'll single shot, then start rapid firing. Every game that I've got on the system is configured as best as it possibly can, because it is simulated recoil for a lot of the games. There's games with what is true recoil, which means like Aliens Extermination. When you have a burst shotgun, a single shotgun, stuff like that, you'll get single shot, burst shot, and so on. You'll have bullet counters, you'll have a display for your lives and stuff like that. So there is some games that has true recoil. A lot of the games you've got to simulate recoil, which when you simulate recoil, it's like you've got to set up, go in the game, see if it's a single shot game, set it to single shot, or if it's a single shot to rapid fire, you'd set it as single shot and rapid fire. And what you'd do is you'd set the letter that you've selected, the keyboard key that you've selected for, say, gun 1, gun 2. So I've got Y and U, or whatever way you've got it configured. I go into joint the key and I can set it to rapidly press that button. So when I press the trigger, what it'll do is it'll say press Y 10 times or so. That's while just holding the trigger. So what it'll do, it'll rapidly press Y, and in MAME hook, what it does is it tells it that it's Y is being pressed so much. So it's not actually the trigger that's configured, it's the actual it's the keyboard key. So I use a key mapper to map the keyboard key. So when I press the trigger, so I set Y to that trigger, and as I press the trigger, it simulates pressing setting off the recoil each time it recognizes Y to be activated. If that makes sense. It's a little bit complicated the way I explain things. I'm terrible at explaining things, but it's pretty straightforward. So let's go ahead and add a couple of coins on this one and just press start. I think I've got a remap start button because I haven't remapped it properly, so I'll just press it on the keyboard. So as you can hear there, as I'm pressing the trigger, it's rapid fire instantly. This is just basically hold the trigger, point and aim. So let's see if we can skip this. So there's in a reload. Same with gun 2. So all we do is back out of the game, and then I can go back through to the main menu again. And like I mentioned before, we do have a tools menu. Try and do this one-handed. So we have a tools menu, and inside there we have Demul shooter. We can load Demul shooter, configure it just on the first boot. Once it's configured on the first boot, you can play till you shut the machine down, and that will load up with all the like I say, the Sega Naomi Sega model, I think, and those a couple of TeknoParrot games, the Recoil as well. So you don't have to have the Recoil on permanently. There's only one game I think it does activate from the booting the machine up, and that is Aliens Extermination. Basically, that's all true Recoil, Aliens Extermination. That's what these guns were designed for, that game itself. So when you boot up the machine and you load straight into Aliens Extermination, the guns will already be configured. They'll have the displays on and so on. So you don't have to load any of the tools up. You play that game straight off the bat. But as soon as you load the tools up and you load up the Recoil system, it can mess that game up. It won't mess the game up, it just won't be true Recoil. It won't work very well on the Recoil itself. But all the other systems won't have all the other games and systems won't have the Recoil unless you enable the Recoil within the Hyperspin tools. Which is great if you are wanting to buy one of these systems, because these Recoils are really loud, and you're playing late at night, you've got family in bed and stuff like that. You then don't have to have the loud Recoil enabled. So basically it's like a switch, turning the Recoil on when you actually load the system, rather than having the Recoil on at all times, which is, like I say, is perfect, especially for people that are in bed and stuff like that. You don't want to hear that loud constant click, and your neighbours might get a bit peeved off as well. So it's a good neat little feature to just enable that Recoil for when you need it. Like I said, Demul shooter will work certain games, so you've got to set that up. Like I say, I may take another dive into it at a later date and see if I can figure out what the hell's going on. I've looked at there's nothing really online explaining it. I've spoke to a few people, like I say, I spoke to Brad about the same issue. He doesn't have that issue. We can't really seem to work it out between why it's doing it. It just does it. But like I say, it's not a huge issue. Just to load it up on the first load up, set up Demul shooter, takes about a minute, if that, and then off you go. You can go into certain games and certain systems without issue. So if we go back and we just go to light gun games. Now I have dumped down all the light gun games. Not in the sense of with the MAME game, sorry, that was on the original drive. Now on the original drive I had around 30,000 MAME games. At the time I didn't want to go through every MAME game that's in the light gun game selection. Because there's 30,000 games, I would have had to go to the database and go through each game. And there's over 200-300 games in the light gun games. But I've went and done that. I've actually gone in, took all those games out, moved them to a separate folder, deleted all the games that was in there. I'm saving around 500 gig. So now on the systems, I'm doing, I believe, a terabyte. And we've got around 400 and something gig left with all the new TeknoParrot titles and so on. So the drive is physically getting bigger with more space, more games to add. And there's always going to be new stuff that's coming out, the new shooters and stuff like that, that can be added to the system. And previous customers that have had these units, I'll just do a reclone of their drive, send the drive off, and then they'll have all those new titles. So let's go ahead into Terminator 2. And I believe Terminator 2 is set sort of through recoil. So as you're shooting, I think it had a glitch in it. You had to set it up 2 ways to allow for as you shoot. No, that was Aliens 3, sorry. So in this, I'll show it off. Basically, when you hold the trigger on the game and your bullets start getting lower, the recoil will get slower. So I think that's the way the true recoil worked on this game. So let's go ahead. So as you can hear there, the bullets are getting slower. If I let the power on the screen build back up, it'll fire faster. And as I hold the trigger, it gets slower. Now if we go across to Aliens, I do have to reconfigure that and swap everything over. Because the IDs had swapped around. So gun 1's gun 2, gun 2's gun 1. Easy fix. So let's go ahead and go to Alien 3. When I do my tests on the system, I always go in, check every system on these gun 1s, check every system, make sure the guns load in properly, play for a little bit, make sure the power supplies warm up a little bit as well. Because the last thing I want is sending one of these units off is causing a fire. I handpick all my parts myself. Obviously I've had 1 or 2 power supplies that weren't adequate and stuff, and this is how you learn. You know, you check them out, warm them up, extensively play them, make sure when these units go off, they're going to work every time. Plug and play, no messing on. And you're not going to have an issue with it overheating, too much overload on certain components and stuff like that. Because some of these guns, the recoils on these guns do need quite a bit of wattage going through them. So let's add a couple of coins and we'll just use gun 2 there. So when the system boots up, you do have to have a script that boots in that enables those LEDs. As you can tell, when I'm on low bullets or low power, the recoil starts struggling. So let's kick back out of there And that's it basically. Like I say, I've still got to go in, mess on with the USBs, because I have bought some new USBs in, which I didn't really need after doing some extensive testing. So the USB IDs are probably going to swap around again. That's why I didn't really bother swapping them back around at the time, is because I'm going to have to change the USB ports on the inside, which is going to possibly swap the USB IDs again. So I'll just go into Windows, change those IDs of the guns, and make sure they're working as gun 1, gun 2. And yeah, so I'll probably have an update video on some new builds. I've still got the NES cabinet build to post up. I've just been super busy. I do have the Avengers one there. I have the Goonies one there, and the Persona. I also have a up the other shop, I have the Iron Maiden cabinet. So I have 5 units. I've got to get finished by Monday, and get out ready packed next week, and make a start next week on the next 4 or 5 builds. I am getting the extra helpers in to help out, and get sort of a production line going on these units. And like I say, I'll be catching up on some builds that are delayed a bit. If you wish to purchase a unit like this, they do start from there are 2,500 these units. They are the smallest compact fixed gun kit. They're all fully plug and play. They have gaming PCs inside. You have a decent motherboard inside these as well. They're the mini ITX motherboards. You've got the Wi-Fi antennas on the motherboard as well, and I think the Wi-Fi is pretty good on these units. You do have a GTX 1650 graphics card inside, so it's good enough to play the gun games. There's no point putting a 3060 inside. You can get a 3060 inside these and possibly run the games in 4K, full true 4K. So you can, but that's probably going to come at a later date. These units I do recommend running in 1080p, and they look great. Even downscaling from 4K to 1080p, they look great. Feel great to play. And like I say, we'll be coming in with a 4K unit as well, which will be a 4-player one, which will have that Tomb Raider game on, a few other. I was adding, I think, Giga Attack 4 onto this setup, but for some reason it wasn't recognizing the guns through Demul shooter on there. I don't know why it wasn't recognizing them, but I have tested that game with the Gun for IR kit and it worked. So I don't know if it's something to do with that game. I'm not sure, but the crosshairs, the sights weren't moving at all. So like, share, subscribe to the videos, hit that notification bell, and make sure you check out the next upcoming videos, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.